And someone told me that they were going to discuss me, and that they were going to present the things that are wrong with me and so forth. And so I asked what church this was going to take place in, and I called the pastor on the phone. He answered the phone, and I said, "This is John Macarthur. I understand that this evening you're going to have a discussion of me." And it got kind of silent on the other end, I confess. But I said to him, "I just want you to know that I'd be more than happy to be there and answer any question that anybody would have. I certainly would be more than willing to just stand there at a microphone and let anyone ask anything they wanted and do the best I could to answer truthfully what's really in my heart and what I really believe. If that would help you come to some meaningful conclusion about me, I would be more than happy to do that." His reply to me was, "Absolutely not. We could never allow that." See, that would spoil the party, because the thing thrives on the absence of the person being slandered. And that's what James is talking about. And few sins are as damaging as this. People can and do say anything, any lying thing that they want to say. And so what James says, and he uses a present tense continuous verb, "Do not go on speaking evil of one another, brothers." Very basic. Don't do that. And then he says this, "He that speaks evil of his brother and judges his brother," and he goes on. Now let me just pick up those two thoughts. He that speaks evil and he that judges. And I want to consider those two terms before we go any further. Both of those are habitual action verbs. He that goes on continually speaking evil, he that goes on continually judging. Now this describes the kind of evil speaking he's talking about. He repeats the verb for evil speaking, and then he adds the thought of judging. That's the word krino. It means to condemn someone. It's not evaluation, it's condemnation. It's saying somebody is wicked. It's damning someone. As I heard about recently, someone said that I was described in Hebrews 10:29 as one who trod underfoot the blood of the covenant and counted it an unholy thing, and I was an apostate who was living on the edge of hellfire. Now that's the kind of condemnation that that James has in mind. That is the added factor of slander. Slander is to speak evil, and then you go one step further and you actually become God and you sentence people to judgment. You see, that's the thing Jesus condemned. Go back to Matthew chapter 7 for a moment. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 1, do you remember this verse, "Judge not, that you be not judged"? I've heard people throw that around. You say about, that person shouldn't live like that. "Oh, judge not, lest you be judged." Shouldn't say that. That's not what that means. That's the word krino again. That means don't condemn people. And he's talking to Pharisees who thought it was their deal to assign people to divine judgment. You can't do that. You can't run the Inquisition. You can't say who is to be eternally damned. Verse 5, he says, "You hypocrite. Get the 2x4 out of your own eye before you mess with a toothpick in somebody else's." So that's essentially the same kind of thing. Jesus reminds the scribes and Pharisees that they're not God. They're not the final court. They're not the judge of all the earth. So we have no right to slander someone, and worse, to assign to them condemnation as if God was operating through us. We might examine, we might try to discern, we don't play God. But people feel free to do that when they feel superior or when they have enough hate, enough venom to do that. The very nature of self-righteousness, says Jesus, is to justify itself and damn other people, to play God. So let's go back to James, and what he is saying is evil speaking and judging flows out of an evil heart. It is a sin of pagans, Romans 1:30. It is alien to Christians. And in Matthew 15, it's there. I need to just mention that to you. Matthew 15, 18, and 19, where Jesus is talking about the things that come out of a man defiling him, not the things that go into him. And he says, for out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, theft, false witness, blasphemies. They come out of the heart. So a pure heart and a renewed mind and the love of God shut this sin off. So James says, do not continue to do this. In fact, the Greek text could just as well be translated, stop doing this, implying that some were even doing it. Don't slander and don't play God and condemn people as if you were the judge. Now, to enforce this, and here's where we get into some tremendously rich theology. James directs his words at 4 areas of thought, and they are very, very profound. First of all, if you want to control your tongue and your heart in this way, it starts with what we think about others. That's the first point. What we think about others. And this is a simple but not simplistic line of reasoning. What we think about others. What do I mean by that? Look at verse 11. What word do you see used 3 times in one form or another in the first 4 lines? What word? Brethren, brother, brother. Obviously, James is using that 3 times in one brief sentence for some impact. And what he is saying is this: I just am reminding you of your relationship to each other. You're going to get a grip on this sin of slander and malicious gossip when you think properly about each other. And what he is saying here is you are all what? Brothers in the family. How can you say this of each other? He that speaks evil of a brother and judges his brother, and he throws that personal pronoun in to sort of emphasize the intimate relationship that exists among Christians. He's writing to a Christian church. He's writing to an assembly of people who are linked in common life. Some are true believers, some are not, but they're all linked in common life. They're all a family. And he says slander, or as it used to be called, calumny, defamation, denigration of character, malicious lying against another in the family is unexpected. It's absolutely unacceptable. You don't do that in a brotherhood. You don't do that among family. You protect each other. But as Galatians 5:15 says, verse 14 says you're to love your neighbors yourself. Verse 15, but if you bite and devour one another, take heed that you don't be consumed by one another. We might expect that from people on the outside, but not on the inside. And yet somebody said the Christian army is the only one that shoots its own wounded. We really are after our own. We tend to slander ourselves. It's a serious sin. That kind of offense is very serious. Look again at Matthew 18. Let me show you how serious it is. And we'll just cover this first point for tonight. But in Matthew 18, verse 7, well, actually, verse 6, whosoever shall offend one of these little ones, and remember, the little ones here are not babies, but Christians, little ones who are children in the spiritual sense, who have become like little children, verse 3, and therefore entered the kingdom, who have humbled themselves, verse 4. And he's talking about spiritual believers, children of God, not babies. Whoever offends one of these little ones would be better for him that a millstone were hanged around his neck and he were drowned in the depths of the sea. He simply says you'd be better off to die a tragic and frightening death than to ever do anything to offend one of my children. What he is saying is you better be careful how you treat other Christians. Got that? Because to offend another Christian is so serious, you'd be better off what? Dead. Dead. Then in verse 7 he says, woe to the world because of